Welcome back to Morning Joe. Here with us now, the Republican governor of the state of Kansas, Governor Sam Brownback. Governor, good to see you here in New York.
It's great to be with you.
You disagree with Mike Barnichel's assessment of the NBA.
Absolutely.
Right?
Kansas is kind of a basketball state, you know, and you got Mario Chalmers, Nick Collinson's both playing in this. You know, we like to watch basketball most any time of year. In driveway, I mean, in a field house is best, I think.
When does the Kansas basketball season end, though?
Officially or unofficially? It really never ends. Yeah, it really never ends. I mean, it keeps on going.
My only point, not my only point, was it's way too late. And
oh, you know, I agree with that. I agree with that point of it. But, I mean, we're still watching this, so it's still KU basketball being played.
Don't argue basketball with a Kansas man. You picked the wrong guy.
This is my only point, by which he means my only non-point.
All right, Governor, let's talk about what you're doing in your state. You caused a bit of a ruckus there with what you've done with tax cuts, reducing the top individual state income tax rate from 6.45% down to 4.9% in 2013, eliminating income taxes on non-wage income for small business. This included cuts on education and social services, which is where some people took exception.
Not so on the last part of that, but
no cuts on education.
No.
Or social services?
No. You got to back up on this. I mean, you can't just start where we are right now. I came into office about 18 months ago, facing about a $500 million shortfall. I mean, that was what we were looking at. And fortunately, at the state level, you've got to balance your budget. You can't just print money yet or anything else. So we had to go in there at that point in time and really adjust our budgets, and did. I'm now looking at about a $500 million surplus. So after we built that up, now we're saying we can cut taxes, because I've got 30 years of data where we had declining. Really, we were growing slower than the entire region, and we're the high tax state in the region, weren't doing well. And so now we're saying we can cut taxes after you made those adjustments and moving forward, facing that $500 million deficit earlier.
So where did you make up the ground then by cutting taxes? If you balance the budget, where did the new revenue come from?
Well, we had some good years. We got a nice oil play that's taking place right now in the state of Kansas. We've had some good agricultural time period. Manufacturing sector is growing. Aviation sector is really moving up. And you got to start paying attention to the details in government. So we're looking at places like, how much are we spending rent for this building? How much are we paying janitorial services? And you can say, look, that isn't going to add up to anything. But the problem of it is it actually does. And nobody's paid attention to it for a long period of time. So it was really nickels and dimes in a lot of different places. But the thing does add up.
The attention to detail that you mentioned, talk, if you would, Governor, about the differences between being a governor day to day, you know, getting a curb cut in a highway, signing a piece of legislation that impacts someone immediately, and being in the United States Senate where you served.
It really is apples and oranges. From the standpoint, you are really right on the ground. And we had a flood last summer, and I'm out there all the time, and it's different people's questions. Somebody says, we need a pump here to get the water out. And you get a hold of the National Guard, and we get a pump. The U.S. Senate is much more global in its view. You don't get into the details as much. I was chair of the Agriculture Subcommittee and Appropriations with a budget 3 times the size that I have right now, and a lot less impact on that budget, because it is so large and so big. But this one that we've got now, it's a $14 billion budget. You're in there looking at that thing every day and really literally asking the question, what are we paying utility rates here? How much is it? And why are we paying such a high utility rate? And let's negotiate to drive that on down. It's a different level of impact, but that's what government's going to have to get to. It's what's going to have to happen at the federal level, really, is getting into that detail of how this budget is actually spent.
We've got another guy who knows something about running a state with us in Washington. Governor Howard Dean wants to get in here. Governor?
Thanks. You know, I've got the same question Mike has. How do you pay for all this? I think supply-side economics has been discredited. You are lucky because you're in the middle of the energy belt, and Oklahoma's done very, very well as well. But I'm just worried about that. You know, I cut income taxes twice, but I also left office with every kid in the state under 18 having health insurance. So I'm just curious about where this is going and how you're going to balance the budget.
Well, step one of what actually takes place on our proposal and what we put in is actually a tax increase, and it's a severance tax increase. So we had a proposal where we had our law was the first 2 years of any new oil well, no taxes on it. This is one of these lateral plays. There is a big flush that comes in initially with the oil, and then it dissipates. We said, well, that's going to be on day one. There will be a tax on that oil. And so we're going to use that set of revenues as well. And plus, it really has been managing and getting our costs down in a very specific fashion that got us to a $500 million surplus, that got us into position to where you could cut taxes so we could grow. Our state taxes were too high. And we got to get them down. Particularly targeted on small business, we took all income taxes off LLCs, sub-S's, and sole proprietorships. It's a way to try to really stimulate that key part of the economy that really causes growth, which is small business.
Well, good luck. I hope it works for you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Governor, we had a fight in the presidential race not that long ago between President Obama and Governor Romney over the question of the federal role in sending money to the states to help with the hiring of and retention of firefighters, cops, stuff like that, right? So President Obama's made a real point of how important that is and how important it is for states like yours. Governor Romney came out and said, you know, President Obama's wrong about this. He talks about how important that he seems to think that's the solution to our problems. Sitting where you sit, would you like to see the federal government reduce its spending on those vital resources in your state, or you think the federal government should give you a little more money?
I don't think they should give us any more money. And the reason I say is they're broke, and we are in a federal system, and it impacts the rest of us when they operate on such a lack of discipline fiscally. So I think they ought to ratchet it down, and really what ought to take place, in my estimation, is over a period of time, you ought to ask for a higher cost share at various, but you ought to say, if you're not willing to join the program, then don't. But you aren't going to get the federal match on it, and let states be in more of a choosing role of what part they want to participate in of the federal role. And I think you're going to have to see a lot more of that happen in the future as we start really wrestling with this deficit.
What about a different philosophy? And that is when they were talking about reducing or increasing taxes on the corporate jets and these sorts of things.
Yeah, which we didn't like in Kansas.
Well, but we also heard the party going,
those jets.
It's a little bit here, it's a little bit there, you're piecemealing this, that's not an answer, were the Republicans' response, and yet you're saying it is that piecemealing, going through, we're reducing here, we're going to add a little here, that's the effective way to govern. So it doesn't sound like the philosophy that we've been getting on a national level is at all corresponding or reflective of the kind of philosophy you've described needed to accomplish the task.
Well, I mean, you're talking taxes on adding, and I'm talking budget on spending.
But no, it's just an analysis of the budget where you have to pick and choose and piecemeal to be effective.
I think on budgets you do. There are places we put more money into, grew the budget, higher education, particularly, but targeted. Like animal sector or aviation, where we do so much in that field. But on taxes, you need to get your overall rates down, and you need to get your social manipulation out of it, in my estimation, to create growth. And we'll see how it works. We'll have a real live experiment. We're right next to some other states that haven't lowered taxes. The area of Kansas City is, I think, the largest urban area in the country that's shared between two states. You'll get a chance to see how this impacts a particular experimental area, and I think Kansas is going to do well.
All right, Governor Sam Brownback, good to see you up here in New York City. On behalf of Mike Barnicle's Rock Chalk Jayhawk.
Thank you.
Take care. Still ahead.